My neighbor Dale and I bought our stoves the same month, 3 years ago. Same brand, same size, same model number if you want to get specific about it. He runs through wood like it's free. I don't. Same size house, same rough climate, same number of cold nights a winter. Some years he's back at the firewood guy's place by February, buying split wood at a price that makes my stomach hurt on his behalf. For the first year, I figured it was just his house. Older windows, maybe a leaky attic, something structural I didn't have to deal with. Told him as much. He agreed with me, honestly, because it was the easiest explanation for both of us. It wasn't the house. I found that out by accident, standing in his side yard one October looking at his wood pile, and it changed how I've burned wood ever since. I'm going to tell you what I saw in that wood pile in a minute, because it's the whole video, really. But let me walk you through what actually happens in my house on a cold night first, because the difference isn't one trick. It's a handful of small decisions stacked on top of each other, and every one of them is worth more than people think. Start with how the fire goes in. Most of us were taught to build a fire the same way, kindling down low, bigger splits stacked above it, lit from underneath so the flame climbs up through the pile. Works fine. It's also not how I load my stove anymore, and the difference surprised me the first time I tried it. I load mine backward now. Biggest, driest splits on the bottom of the firebox, packed in tight. A middle layer of smaller pieces laid crosswise over that. Kindling and a fire starter right on top, and I light it from up there instead of underneath. The first time you do this, it feels wrong. You're staring at a fire burning on top of a stack of unlit wood, and every instinct says it should just go out. It doesn't. What happens instead is the flame works its way down through the stack slowly, hours instead of minutes, and something else happens along with it that actually matters more than the slower burn time. As the heat moves down through that wood, it's releasing gases the whole way. The same gases a bottom-lit fire mostly just sends straight up your chimney as smoke wasted. Loaded top down, those gases have to pass back through the hot coal bed underneath before they can escape, and a good bit of them ignite a second time right there instead of leaving as smoke. That's heat you were paying for in firewood and not getting in your living room, and it's just sitting there for the taking if you load the stove differently. You'll know it's working because your chimney runs cleaner. Genuinely, go out and look at what's coming out of your flue on a good top-down burn versus a bottom-lit one sometime. Thin, almost clear. That's fuel actually burning instead of fuel escaping half-burned. The air control matters just as much, and it's the piece people skip because it feels backward too. Wide open while the top layer catches, sure, but once you've got a real established fire going, I close that damper down to about a quarter of what it was, and I leave it there. Feels like you're choking a fire that just got going. You're not. A properly established fire doesn't need that much air to keep burning. It needs it to keep burning fast and hot and wasteful. Throttled down, it slows into what's actually a cleaner, more complete burn, stretching one load of wood over 3 or 4 hours instead of 90 minutes of a big showy flame that leaves you feeding the stove again before your coffee's even cold. $15 gets you a magnetic stovepipe thermometer if you want to stop guessing at this. Most cast iron stoves run best somewhere between 400 and 650 degrees on that pipe. Below it, you're smoldering and losing heat to creosote-forming smoke. Above it, you're just burning fast and losing heat the other direction. I didn't own one for the first 2 winters. I own one now, and it's the $15 I'd tell anybody to spend first. Here's a piece almost nobody adds, and it's where the rest of your money goes if you're building this properly instead of piecemeal. A cast iron stove is a radiator while it's burning hot, and basically nothing once the fire's died down for the night. Old farmhouses solved that gap with mass, stone, brick, sometimes a big soapstone slab set close to the firebox, something dense enough to soak up heat while the stove's cranking and slow release it for hours after the coals are mostly gone. I stacked loose fire brick on a heat-resistant pad along the side of mine, about $60 from a masonry supplier, not the marked-up stuff at the home improvement store. Wake up at 5 a.m. now, and that corner of the room is still noticeably warm, hours after the fire's basically out. Before the brick, that same hour of the morning was cold enough to see your breath near the stove. And the house itself matters more than people give it credit for. I don't heat rooms I'm not using. Doors closed to the back bedroom, a heavy curtain hung across the bottom of the stairs, so the warm air I'm making downstairs doesn't just pour straight up to an empty second floor and disappear. Heat rises whether you want it to or not. And an open stairwell in a house with a single wood stove is one of the fastest ways to burn twice the wood for half the comfort. All of that, the top-down load, the damper discipline, the fire brick, the closed doors, genuinely works. I'd stand behind every piece of it on its own. And for about a year and a half, I figured that was the whole answer to why my woodpile lasted longer than Dale's. Then I was standing in his side yard that October, waiting on him to finish a phone call, looking at his woodpile because there wasn't much else to look at. And I noticed his wood was still faintly green at the split faces. Not soaking wet, nothing dramatic, just not fully dry. He'd had it delivered in August, split and stacked by September, and by his logic, that was plenty of time before the cold really set in. It wasn't, and this is the part that actually matters more than everything I just told you combined. Fresh cut wood can be carrying close to half its weight in water. Every bit of heat your stove makes from a log like that has to boil that water off first before a single degree of it goes toward warming your house. You're not really heating your living room with green wood. You're running an inefficient water evaporator that happens to warm the room as a side effect, and it costs you the majority of that log's potential heat doing it. My wood gets split the spring before I intend to burn it. Stacked off the ground on pallets, covered on top but open on the sides so air actually moves through it. And it sits like that for close to a full year before it goes anywhere near the stove. Oak, if I've got it, sometimes closer to 2 years because dense hardwood holds moisture longer than something like pine or ash. Dale's wood had maybe 6 weeks of drying time before it went in his stove that first cold snap. Looked dry on the outside, wasn't at the core, and that gap is genuinely most of the difference between his woodpile disappearing by February and mine lasting the whole winter with room to spare. You can check this yourself for about $20. A cheap moisture meter, probes pressed into a freshly split face, not the weathered outside of a log, the inside, and anything reading above 20% still has real drying left to do, no matter how it looks stacked in the yard. I test mine now before it ever comes inside. Takes 10 seconds, and it saved me from burning wood I thought was ready and wasn't. I told Dale all of this standing right there in his yard, and to his credit, he didn't argue. Split a new stack the following spring, stacked it properly, gave it the season it needed. His wood use dropped noticeably the very next winter. Not to my level yet, because a year of proper seasoning habits doesn't erase years of the other kind overnight, but enough that he noticed, and enough that he's stuck with it since. Here's what I'd actually tell you to do with all of this if you only do one thing. Skip the fire brick for now if the budget's tight. Skip the fancy thermometer if you have to. But go look at your woodpile today and press a moisture meter into a freshly split face if you've got one, or just split a piece open and feel it. Cool and slightly damp at the core means it's not ready no matter what the calendar says or how long it's technically been sitting outside. That single check, more than the stove technique, more than the damper discipline, more than anything else in this video, decides whether you're burning fuel or burning water this winter. None of this is a secret utility companies are sitting on, whatever the title of this video might make it sound like. It's just physics that got quietly buried under decades of central heating, making firewood into an afterthought instead of a skill anybody had to actually get right. My grandfather never owned a furnace and never had to think twice about any of this. He just did it, the same way you'd tie your boots, because getting it wrong meant a cold house and nobody to blame but himself. I'm not going to pretend an $85 shopping list magically cuts your heating bill in half on its own. What actually cuts it in half is doing 5 or 6 small things right instead of one thing right and 5 things by habit. The stove, the air, the mass, the doors you close, all of it helps. But if I had to bet on which single change would save you the most wood this winter, I'd put my money on the wood pile every time. Not the stove sitting in your living room. Go split next year's wood now if you haven't already. Stack it properly. Give it the time it actually needs instead of the time you'd prefer it needed. Everything else in this video is worth doing too, but that's the piece that actually moves the needle, and it's the one thing almost nobody checks until they're standing in a neighbor's yard wondering why their woodpile looks so different from their own. What's your setup looking like this winter? Drop it in the comments. I read all of them, and I've picked up more than a few tricks that way myself.